Welcome to Front Office Pros. Today, we're going to be going through a Week 1 recap of our Dynasty Salary Cap League. During last week's episode, we talked about how during the season, we're going to be giving you a behind-the-scenes look of what it's like to be in a real contract salary cap Dynasty League. So, starting off with Week 1 here, we thought that we're going to be going through each team. We provided power rankings in that first episode. If you're interested, go check that out. I highly encourage that, as well as an episode we did many months ago talking about the basics of a contract salary cap league just to familiarize yourself with this type of format. Joe and I are going to go through each matchup. We've got 16 teams in our league. It's offense and full IDP. Quarterbacks matter a ton. They can cause a win or a loss based on this format. So, Joe, let's talk about the first matchup, which was myself against Dan. I scored 328.85 points. Dan scored 413.7 points. Dan was the highest scoring team on the week. Heading into our power rankings, I believe I was 4 and Dan was 3. Dan's team, if this is an example of what his team is capable of, he may not be able to be stopped. He was able to do, Jordan Love talking about possibly having an MVP type season. He scored, a ton of points for Dan. And then even guys like Jamar Chase, didn't even show up. But it didn't matter because JSN showed up, Bijan Robinson, Brock Bowers, they all showed up. And then Myles Garrett and Harold Landry, both had dominant games. Both had over 2 sacks. And if Jordan Battle is the real deal as well, he's coming on. He had an interception. We talked about him recently. 12 total tackles. And Jeffrey Simmons also had a crazy game. Now, you can't expect that every week, but he had guys even like Elijah Cansey on his defense not show up.
Yeah, really just crazy that he was able to put up 413 points, and even with getting duds with Jamar Chase having a bad game, like you said, Elijah Cansey getting him 0. Micah McFadden at linebacker, who we thought was interesting, getting hurt early in the game, only gets him 8 points as well. So just to being able to overcome some of that, it was really pretty surprising. But just goes to show you, we talked about Dan and the studs he has on his team and the firepower he potentially has here.
Yeah, and then due to that firepower, it's going to be very hard to stop him if he's firing on all cylinders.
Yeah, for sure.
On my side, I think a decent performance. A little disappointed. I made some bad starting decisions. Not starting Javonte Williams. That was definitely a mistake. But I will say on my defense, I'm a little disappointed. I made some moves, this week, as far as picking up players in free agency. But really disappointed in Jair Brown and Keon White. These were guys who I was expecting kind of this, next jump. They both, were my understanding, all the depth charts you read were going to be starters. Jair Brown barely saw the field. I want to say he had less than 5 snaps. Didn't even play as a starter. So, he got a big donut for me. So it made me now have to scramble for my safety position because I was planning on using Kyle Duggar, and he was now benched by the Patriots. So now I'm really scrambling at the safety position, which is not good for me. And then for Keon White, I thought, it'd be a match made, with Mike Vrabel being the head coach and, with Harold Landry coming in. I thought that they'd really, I think they could do very well with each other, but they were actually using a lot of Clavion Chason in the game, which I was shocked about. And Keon White, I don't think he even exceeded over 50% of the snaps. So now I'm kind of scrambling a little bit to fix some holes on my defense here.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, those are guys were disappointing. I mean, you do have, safety Isaiah Pola-Mao from the Raiders to help you out. I mean, he had a decent week with 25 points. Certainly would have helped get you the more total points. Obviously, wouldn't have beaten Dan, but yeah, surprised you didn't just put Javonte in your lineup, just given that you were essentially starting a couple of backup running backs.
Yeah, I mean, that was a mistake on my part. I thought Tank Bigsby could be more part of the game plan. Obviously, he's now been traded to the Eagles, so now his value is down the tubes. But I just had some bad starting decisions. Should have started Devin White. and Polamau, who we mentioned, who will now be starters in my lineup, as well as Carlton Davis. But early on, and this is where you got to be careful, right? Being too hyper reactive. But I saw, on X that it was going to be really bad weather in the Patriots game. You heard the field conditions were really sloppy. It was rainy. And so, it got me nervous as to, what's the game script, how things are going to be. And so as a result, I kind of pivoted off those guys. But had I not even paid attention to that, I'd probably start those guys and I'm not even thinking about it. So sometimes you got to be aware of not being so reactive to what's out there.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, because weather turned out to not be an issue, but there's a lot to read into. I agree. A good PSA there. Be careful of that, and just start the guys that you think are going to perform the best and really going to get you there.
All right, so in our next matchup, and I should have mentioned we do divisions, so this is all division matchups in the first 3 weeks. We've got Charlie against Adam. This is an upset for us. Adam, we had power ranked as the 12th best team, whereas Charlie is the 5th. Adam scored 280.5 points, so Charlie is 270.4. On Charlie's side, he went ahead and started Bryce Young, and that ultimately cost him. He got him negative points. And just like the Carolina Panthers, if you have a bad day in our league format, it could basically cost you the game. And that's what happened with the Panthers, too. Bryce Young had a horrible game. As a result, you see the team didn't do so well. But it's one of those things where if I'm Charlie, I'm a little concerned about my team, especially with Tyreek Hill. He franchise tagged him over the offseason. Kind of, I think, hoping for similar production. It's early yet; it's week 1, but the signs in Miami, don't really sound that good. Now he does have, a Sam Laporta on the bench. I'm a little surprised that he didn't end up having him in a starting lineup. Also, Jaden Reed was more effective than I thought with the Jones fracture, so he may be able to work around it, but it's just going to be less firepower on his offense.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the huge difference maker is if he would have started Michael Penix over Bryce Young. I mean, that's a 44-point swing for him. Would have easily gotten him the win. But yeah, really surprised he didn't. Being that we are tight end premium, he didn't go with the 2 tight ends and essentially bench Rashad Bateman. Even if he still wanted to start Jerry Jeudy, put him in one of the wide receiver spots and slide in Sam Laporta. I think that would have been a better move.
Yeah, on the defensive side of the ball, I think. He's obviously got to be happy about Kyle Hamilton. I mean, he had a heck of a game with 9 total tackles, 2 pass deflections, and a forced fumble. Guy's incredible. Winfield was not himself. And then, you saw that, and Derek Brown was a little rusty as well. Dexter Lawrence didn't have a good game. But Foye was back to his normal self, and Schlesinger looked really good too. So some promising pieces, I think, for Charlie's defense.
Yeah, definitely. And, TJ Watt did have some impactful plays, but he ultimately didn't get a sack in that game. So, there's been definitely better days for Charlie's defense as well. He'll be scoring into the 40s in no time, I'm sure, with TJ Watt. And then, Schlesinger was a guy I liked a lot. He showed out in his first game there. And like you said, Foye returning back to form. And if Derek Brown can get back to, what we'd seen before getting injured as well, that'll only help him.
Yeah, on Adam's side, maybe we, I guess, looked over Adam here. I mean, Justin Herbert had a heck of a game, and is this a sign of things to come? Is Herbert going to step into the second year of the Jim Harbaugh offense? Not to mention the rest of his offense. I mean, he started Jalen Noel. I think that was really risky, being that he's a rookie and just haven't seen it yet. But he's got, for him, honestly, the injuries and how things worked out really well in his favor. Marquise Hollywood Brown now can be a starter for him in his offense, here on out. And Jaylen Warren looked a lot more effective than I thought he was going to be. So, looking at his starting lineup now, you got Pollard, Warren, Golden, London, Mims, and Hollywood Brown with Evan Ingram at tight end. That's pretty solid.
Yeah, definitely. We'll see, how Evan Ingram's calf does and ultimately if he's able to play this week. But yeah, I think, just part of it with Adam's squad a lot, like you said, with his RB2 with Jaylen Warren, just not sure how they were going to deploy the backs, but with Caleb Johnson pretty much a non-factor in the backfield, he did a lot better. And Matthew Golden, he only got 5 points in our league, but I think, there's going to be better days for him ahead as well.
Yeah, on the defensive side of the ball, Adam kind of patched it together. He does have some, a little bit of star power with Zach Bond, Zach Allen, and Josh Hines Allen. But Hines Allen, didn't really have a good showing against the Panthers. Only had one QB hit. But it's got to be encouraging. Hassan Reddick had that sack. We talked about him as a guy. Adam was able to sign him in free agency, I think 1 year, $3 million. I think that's going to really pan out for him. He already has a sack on the year, looking a lot better than what he did last year. And also a guy like Mac Wilson, a guy he signed for dirt cheap. But, we knew he was going to have the green dot in Arizona. Ended up having 8 total tackles, a tackle for loss, a pass deflection. You had a really good day. And even Rosaboom had 8 total tackles as well. Both those guys, Adam was able to scoop up. We'll see, what this means for his team going forward. But I guess, are you buying? I mean, what are your thoughts? I mean, are you expecting? Did we underrate him at this point?
I don't know if we underrated him. Like I said, I mean, if Charlie makes the right decision at quarterback, he ultimately wins this matchup, and Adam would be 0-1. But, we're managing your team and putting those start sits matters. And, and I'm not so sure. You'll see if Herbert's able to continue to put up those big numbers because, I mean, that really helped carry his team as well. But, we could have overlooked him. But, we'll see as it progresses here.
All right, so our next matchup was Paul. He was the 13th ranked in the power rankings, and Andrew was 14th ranked. Andrew had the upset here and won quite handsomely here. 312.35 points for Andrew, 228 points for Paul. On Andrew's side, his offense ended up performing a lot better than I thought, even with Amon-Ra St. Brown and Mark Andrews not doing so well. Wan'Dale Robinson had a decent game, as well as Diami Brown. I mean, not crazy, right? But we do give points for first downs as well. Overall, outperforming Paul's offense, which is saying something because Paul's offense is the strength of his team. So if Andrew outscored him on offense, then you knew Paul didn't have a chance.
Yeah, and I mean, we mentioned our quarterback scoring is pretty strict for bad quarterback days, and if you're going to throw interceptions, so Bo Nix getting him -0.9. I mean, when your quarterback gets negative, we saw with Charlie, it's really hard to overcome that, and it basically just sinks and causes you to lose. And I mean, really, that was kind of the difference in the offensive matchup. And Andrew ultimately outscoring Paul's offense. If he gets a normal day out of Bo, or I mean, Rodgers on his bench put up 69 points. It's a lot different situation here.
Yeah, I mean, Kyler Murray, 48.45 points for Andrew, -0.9 for Paul. And just looking at his offense, I mean, he even started Michael Pittman, which I would not have done, and he got him 24 points. But Pickens and McLaurin both had down days. If Paul's going to win matchups, the way his team is structured, he needs it. It needs to come from his offense.
Yeah, interesting enough. I mean, Paul being the Panthers fan, drafting Ted McMillan where he did, and he decided not to start him. 15 points.
Yeah, drafting him at the 4th overall.
That's an interesting decision.
Yeah, I would have definitely put him in instead of I would have put Ted McMillan in over Pittman.
But I mean, Pittman ended up being a good move, but McMillan would have scored over Pickens or McLaurin, who he had in there. But hard to blame him there. He's got a lot of different options.
What's your thoughts on Mark Andrews? Are you concerned at all about it? I mean, Andrews got him, he's playing 2 tight ends right now with Chigakonkwo and Mark Andrews. Are you concerned at all?
Slightly. Just, he didn't really seem to be involved in the game plan. But last year, I mean, he really was just a touchdown machine, and that's what kept him relevant. We've talked about in the offseason, if he doesn't get the touchdowns, you're going to be disappointed. But I think a lot of it, too, was the Ravens were getting a huge lot of big runs from Derrick Henry for touchdowns. So those are quick drives. Maybe if they don't have so many of those explosive plays for touchdowns, and they've actually got to operate. I mean, we didn't really see him get to the red zone either, and that's honestly where Mark Andrews eats.
Yeah, it might have been game script dependent. That, like you said, that it really didn't work out in his favor.
Yeah, definitely something to monitor. And I mean, especially Isaiah Likely wasn't even playing, so he really was the only tight end option, and he just disappointing. But I do think game script had a lot to do with it.
On Andrew's side on the defense here, I mean, he's got to be excited about, Javon Hargrave having 2 sacks. Now, who knows if he can keep it up, but, his defense performed all pretty well. Now, Blake Cashman did leave with an injury. I think he's out with a hamstring. So now Andrew's going to have to fill that, with Cashman with somebody else. But overall, his defense, George Karlaftis looked pretty good, against the Chargers. Budda Baker is a stud at the safety position. I'm a little surprised. I don't know why he didn't start Nick Bonito. Nick Bonito would have gotten him, 29 points, with a sack and, 3 total tackles, 3 QB hits. Also Braden Fisk. I don't know. I kind of those are some head scratching start decisions in my opinion.
I mean, Broncos going up against the rookie quarterback too. I mean, that's just crazy. And he was one of the teams we had talked about with looking ahead, and it, he had 3 safeties in his lineup, and we were both wondering kind of the strategy behind that, where edge rushers, score up the most points. I definitely would have had Nick Bonito, and they're really surprised he didn't do that.
Yeah, on Paul's side, I think he's going to be in trouble. I mean, we see in his defense, only one player scored above 20 points. That was Malcolm Kuntz, which I don't even know if you can expect Malcolm Kuntz to do that week in and week out. He had a sack and a forced fumble against the Patriots. I do think he's got to be encouraged by Javon Kinlaw. I was not expecting. I thought he was going to be the 3rd guy, and I was very disappointed to see that Johnny Newton – I don't think he even played over 50% of the snaps. It was really Deron Payne and Javon Kinlaw, which I was shocked about because, they had drafted Johnny Newton last year. Would have thought that it's the same front office. I would have thought that, with, getting rid of Jonathan Allen, that it was really the opportunity for Johnny Newton to step forward, but I guess not.
Yeah, we we both thought that and weren't necessarily afraid of Javon Kinlaw, but definitely should have been because, like you said, he got all the opportunities. But yeah, I mean, that was, Paul's defense. He doesn't really have the depth. I think also, I mean, we'll see if Van Ness continues, but on his bench, 16 points, he got a half a sack. I mean, that's kind of encouraging to see something out of him as well.
I mean, you're probably starting him next week, right?
Yeah, I mean, they play Thursday night, so I probably would throw him in there.
Well, the other concern is the guys that maybe he would have relied upon, like Robert Spillane and Jeremy Chin, both have 3 tackles each. That's not going to cut it. And both are at new teams. So it could be indicative of something larger that they're not going to be as, as good of players this year from a stats perspective.
Yeah, that definitely could be the case.
All right, so in our next matchup, we've got Josh versus Tom. Tom is our league champion from the year prior, and this is an upset. We have Tom as the 2nd power ranked team. He scored 291.75 points. Josh is the 6th rank, which you and I were, kind of bullish on Josh's team, and he scored 328.7 points. So ended up upsetting, in week 1 here, the team that won it all last year. Really, really impressed, with that. And if you look at Josh's team here, it's not like his offense even did all that much. Nico Collins, had a down day in Houston. TJ Hawkinson, wasn't as involved with the Vikings pass offense as I thought he would be. Jahmyr Gibbs and Hampton, did not have that great of days. But Patrick Mahomes, he ended up doing, decently well against the Chargers. Whereas with Tom, with Joe Burrow had a down day, and there was a 25-point difference, which practically was almost the difference in the outcome.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, if Joe Burrow plays up to the typical Joe Burrow standards, I mean, I think Tom at least makes it a lot closer, if not edges him out. But yeah, I mean, like you mentioned, it definitely was an upset, and that's even, crazy enough. I mean, that's even with Tom having the game that Derrick Henry did as well with, 34 points. I mean, it, should have somewhat made up for Burrow, but quarterback is that important in our league.
Well, and James Cook too. James Cook had a really solid game as well.
Yeah.
On the defensive side of the ball, for Josh, I mean, you got to see Gervin Dexter continue what he's able to do. Brian Burns had a monster game that really helped him, in his lineup here. I also think it was good to see Cameron Bynum, now he's with the Colts, him having a strong game. as well. I mean, stats-wise, Brandon Jones had a good game, but, and I think in real life, at us watching, you weren't that thrilled with him, Joe. But overall, just steady for Josh's defense. There's not a lot of depth per se on his bench that you could replace with, in my opinion, from what I'm seeing based on the scoring of what happened. But overall, decent production for him.
Yeah, definitely. I know watching that game, Brandon Jones. I mean, a lot. I think with the fumble recovery that Hufanga forced definitely helped him. But to me, Brandon Jones had a lot of missed opportunities in that game. But maybe that it's even leaves room for improvement if he's able to come up with some of those tackles.
On Tom's side, I think it's tough, right? I mean, Zaire Franklin, did not have his traditional game that we're accustomed to seeing, only 4 total tackles. I think that was game script dependent. But I think for Tom too, it's like, I just don't know why he didn't start Andrew Van Ginkel. This guy was, I believe, a top 5 edge rusher last year. I don't expect him to be any different. And he left him on his bench. That one was a head scratcher to me.
Yeah, I agree. I don't know why he decided to go ahead and make that move either.
But ultimately, I mean, his defense, it was a close game. It really was.
Yeah.
We thought this was going to be an interesting matchup. I would have thought Tom was going to win, but Josh pulled it out.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, Tom does have some. It's interesting. Tom's got some guys that put up a decent amount of points on his bench for his defense too. So, but other than Van Ginkel, I probably would be the only thing I question on what he did there.
All right, in our next matchup, we got you, Joe, going up against Tim, and you were the 16th team, so we were not expecting a lot out of you, Joe, and Tim was the 11th best team. And, looking at the score here, at first we were wondering if there was going to be a huge upset in our hands early on, but as you'll see, Tim, blew it away afterwards. Joe had 261.95 points. Tim, 369.85 points. And a lot of it, Joe, was just the crazy night for Josh Allen. Because we give points for first downs and we heavily weight, touchdowns. Josh got 80 points for Tim, and that was huge. And he had Keon Coleman that also got him 31 points. So that hookup, really panned out for Tim.
Yeah, it really did. I mean, but that was also why, we had Tim's team decently high. We didn't love a lot of the supporting cast he had, but the fact that he had a superstar player like Josh Allen, he's got the ability to kind of have these boom weeks like this. And it just so happened it came right out of the gates and was a game that he had to do that for the Bills to win because, they got down early with the Ravens.
Well, he's got to be excited about Keenan Allen. Him getting 7 catches, 68 yards on a touchdown. That was a wave 2 signing. I think he got him for 1 year, $4.6 million, and that was a great signing. The big thing we said about Tim's offense was his running backs, and his running backs scored him a total of 6.7 points, but it didn't matter. Tim almost scored 200 points on his offense, so the rest of the players just did really well. So it just would be great. Maybe if Tim's a playoff team, can he try to make some sort of push to get some running backs in there to keep him in the hunt?
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see what he's willing to do. Typically, Tim's one to not necessarily make those aggressive moves, as he's okay just kind of being a steady team and kind of trying to make the playoffs.
Yeah, for your team, Joe, I mean, I think you got to be excited about the development of Troy Franklin. He was a lot more involved in the game plan this year. 6 targets, for the Broncos, as well as I couldn't believe. I mean, this was just fantastic for you. But Dallas Goedert got so many different targets. There's no long-term plans for him for your team. He's perfect trade bait. To be able to trade him, it's only going to help for you to be able to trade him. And the Harold Fannin draft pick is looking phenomenal.
Yeah, Fannin was a lot more heavily involved than I ever dreamed he would be right out of the gates. I mean, I thought he was an interesting prospect. Obviously, did what he did at Bowling Green, but to be able to see that in week 1 and just how heavily he's utilized, and even with Njoku out there and healthy, and him to be as targeted as much as he did, was really encouraging for me. Like you said, moving forward, and Dallas Goedert, I think he's got potential to have a nice week 2 this week against the Chiefs. They seem to be kind of that pass funnel defense. Tight ends typically do well, so I think maybe after this week I'll try to trade Goddard.
All right, if anyone's listening in the league, be prepared. I think Goddard's going to be up for grabs here. Heading over to the defense side of the ball, really the big thing to call here is Ed Oliver. Oliver had an incredible game. 6 tackles, 3 tackles for loss, a QB hit, a sack, a forced fumble. In our scoring, he scored bonanza points. And ultimately, I think it could be a promising thing for Ed Oliver just this year in general. If Ed keeps this up, I think it could be legit. I mean, he looked like the real deal on Sunday night.
Yeah, he definitely did. And, for him to make that play on Derrick Henry too and strip that ball out, I mean, that was absolutely a huge moment. But he also had a sack in that game. It's just crazy, man. Like literally Josh Allen and Ed Oliver scored half of what my team scored. So he got that for much production out of 2 players, which is just wild.
Yeah, I mean, I am surprised that he did not start Kayvon Thibodeau. That's for one thing. Left him on the bench, decided to go with Jason Owe instead of Kayvon Thibodeau. I was good with Joey Bosa and Abdul Carter, but that one surprised me. And now with Julian Blackmon, he's going to be undergoing surgery for a labrum injury. I want to say, I think he might be done for the year because he has a torn labrum. I don't see him. Or maybe do you think he'll come back? He's just going to miss extended time. I
don't know. It's I think that might take him out for the season. I know he had a labrum issue before. It's not good, and it's really unfortunate for him.
It is, because he was actually a lot better than I thought he was. But now that leaves Tim really thin because it really only has Xavier Woods. So he's got to go get a safety ASAP.
Yeah, for sure. And hopefully there's somebody you can find on the waiver wire there.
Yeah, on your side of the ball, Joe, I mean, this is the youth movement over there, but you've got to be excited. I mean, I know we were watching, you and I are laughing back and forth about Colby Wooden, guy who people are probably like, who? But, he replaced Kenny Clark in that defense, had a great game.
Yeah, he really did. I mean, I know we were laughing about Colby Wooden because, I mean, he was the guy I was just looking to pick up, and he, minor eligible player is where I've been just absolutely hunting this offseason to get him on my squad, and for him to come right out of the gates and do what he did was really surprising. And then, Riley Moss did really well for me as well, the guy that I was able to scoop up off of waivers that somebody let go.
Well, another thing I thought was probably exciting for you is your safeties seem to be locked up. I mean, Xavier Watts had a great debut for the Falcons as a rookie, as well as Craig Woodson, who supplanted Kyle Duggar as a starter. Basically you've got 2 safeties on the cheap that you drafted that could really – well, actually, I think Woodson was undrafted, but
right.
They could pan out really well for you going forward.
Yeah, definitely seems to after week 1. So hopefully they'll continue to do that.
All right, so our next matchup was Mark against Jason. Mark is the 15th ranked team in our power rankings, and Jason is 10. Jason scored 307.4 points to Mark's 247.3. Ultimately, looking at Mark's team here, he didn't even surpass 100 points on offense. That's going to be hard in any way to be able to compete. I do think for him, Travis Etienne scoring 21.1 points. And now with the Tank Bigsby trade, Mark is a team who's looking to, I would say rebuild at this point. Etienne seems like a perfect trade target at the deadline. This is a guy who, he'll be a free agent next year. More than likely, you're not going to sign him. I think you could probably get at least a 2nd-round pick so long as he continues to be as relevant. Now, if I were Mark, I may even consider trying to trade him now because if Bezel Tootin starts to, be the real deal, then your window closed. But
Tim should be on the horn right now trying to make something happen there. Yeah, I mean, that would be the perfect acquisition for Tim's team.
Yeah, no, I agree. There's no reason why. And honestly, it makes sense for both teams. Tim, in the playoff hunt. Mark, no business to be in the playoff hunt at this point.
Yeah, I mean, just potential running backs to be available, and that's the 1 weak spot on Tim's roster. He should get that done.
Yeah, and then, Dak had a down game. Only scored him 17 points. It's going to be hard to come back from that. But, I mean, the problem is, Mark's offense is pretty thin as it is. he doesn't really have a lot. I mean, he probably should have put Ray McLeod in there. I think it was kind of a gamble to play Ben Sinnott. I would not have done that.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's something I'm sure he'll look at and make that move. But I mean, it does seem like Worthy goes down, and with us being able to have the return yardage, it seems like he could put DK in his lineup for Tennessee. I mean, he seems to be pretty electric on the special teams returns.
Yeah, 156 in return yards. So, but yeah, that's also that injury for Xavier Worthy. It's just all the more reason, even if Mark was hoping to possibly be a playoff team, it's just, the Worthy injury and everything else. Like, I'm with you. ETN, if I were Mark and Tim, I'd be, figuring out a deal right now.
Yeah, it seems to be the perfect match of, fitting team names and where they're at. I mean, like you said, ETN doesn't really help Mark here. He's not exactly trying to win. So, Tim is, and that would be the perfect guy to acquire here.
On Jason's side, I'd be a little panicked. Lamar Jackson had an incredible game for you, which really helped. But, his receivers are very thin. Cooper Kupp, Tyler Lockett, Adam Thielen, combined, they scored 5.5 points. Lockett got you a donut. Thielen got you 2 points. Kupp got you 3.5. He doesn't really have – he did pick up Calvin Austin and Romeo Doubs, which honestly maybe guys who now he starts in his lineup, and he may even start Jonnu Smith, as a second tight end. But, he does have really good running backs. He's already starting 3 with McCaffrey, Swift, and Achane. So I don't know. It's a little concerning, I think.
Yeah, we knew the wide receiver position was the concerning thing for Jason, but Calvin Austin was involved in the Pittsburgh Steelers offense a lot more than I thought, and I felt like Dobbs kept getting overlooked. For Green Bay, I feel like everyone kept obviously wanted to talk about the new toy, Matthew Golden. Jaden Reed was getting the buzz because of his injury and everything, and he was the guy last year. But Dobbs is seems to just be a steady player. Doesn't necessarily have the ceiling as those other guys, but I think he's a solid floor guy.
On the defensive side of the ball, for Mark, I think he's got a real opportunity for Alex Highsmith and Jordan Brooks as trade targets here, as trade bait. Jordan Brooks scored, he had 5 solo tackles, 9 assisted, a tackle for loss in a hurry. In our league, scored 26.5 points. He's on a 1-year deal right now. Again, perfect target, for a trade target to be able to acquire for a team who's looking to compete and get linebacker points. Alex Highsmith had a sack, 8 total tackles, a tackle for loss, 3 QB hits. He's the guy who's on a 2-year deal, but I want to say it's pretty much all base. So, those are guys who, at this point, are not in Mark's future. But, to me, it would be very helpful for another team out there.
Yeah, definitely. The opportunity is definitely there for those guys. We talked about, Highsmith before. He's got the perfect upside there, playing opposite of TJ Watt with the Steelers. And, Jordan Brooks did really well last year in Miami, and it looks like he's off to a great start again. So those are definitely 2 logical trade targets there.
Speaking of the Miami linebackers, Jason's got Tyrell Dodson. He's got to be excited about that. Even Minkah Fitzpatrick ended up doing a lot better than what we're accustomed to seeing these past 2 years. I just think Jason's defense honestly just underperformed. Kobe Turner had a bad game. Barmore had a bad game. Grenard had kind of a basic game, but Carl Granderson, getting 1.5 sacks and 6 total tackles. Granderson had a great game. I don't think Jason was able to kind of patch it together with his defense. But I don't think defense is going to necessarily be his issue here. Although he doesn't have any game records besides Kobe Turner or I guess Grenard maybe.
Yeah, and I think Christian Barmore, he missed a lot of time, and he's got to get back. So I know it was a disappointing week 1, but I think once he gets his legs underneath him and continues to play, I think he'd only improve on the season there. And then on this bench, he's got a guy like Jarvis Brownlee, who's pretty bad on the field, but I think he's going to get peppered with targets, which will provide a nice opportunity for him.
All right, so the next matchup, we had our 7-8 power rank teams. Chris Nolan at number 7, they scored 253.9, and number 8, John He scored 331.4 points. So John took the win on this one. And primarily, what happened with Chris Nolan, they started Tua. Tua got him -7 points. Had they started, Caleb Williams, that's 42 points. That would have been a huge swing right there. You're talking about almost a 50-point swing. Still wouldn't have done it. But for them, just a down week. I mean, you had, A.J. Brown only get one target. Brian Thomas Jr., who I am slightly concerned about. We talked about how he did a lot better with Mac Jones in week 1. It didn't really, I don't think it helped calming our nerves at all in that situation.
No, it didn't. But hearing Liam Cohen talk about it after the game, being a not in this league, but Brian Thomas owner in a couple of other leagues, him just hearing about the fact that they did try to get him involved. Ultimately, Trevor just didn't hit him, and talked about how Trevor's got to be more accurate. I mean, he did have 7 targets in the game, so they are trying to get him involved.
But Trevor's accuracy is becoming a problem. Like I think Trevor Lawrence might be one of the most overrated quarterbacks that we've seen in a long time. Just his pedigree coming out of the #1 pick, they thought he was going to be this Andrew Luck type prospect. He just hasn't been it.
No, he hasn't. And I know Cohen says a lot of it's in his footwork, and they're working on it. So maybe as he continues to get used to that and keeps working on it, maybe it does improve. But definitely, I think better days are ahead for Brian Thomas Jr. and A.J. Brown.
Yeah, and John's team, his offense scored pretty well. His receivers are a little bit of concern. Xavier Legette, he was a starter for him. Khalil Shakir did pretty well. Puka did well. But now Kittle just went on the IR. To me, Joe, I mean, let me just look at the backups here. I mean, John's basically got Likely, who's out, Jatavian Sanders, and Disley. So he may just roll with Jatavian Sanders, but this would be a perfect team, I would think, that might be interested in Dallas Goedert, to be honest with you.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, John's team is definitely, he's got a solid squad. I imagine he's going to be competing. So, yeah, I Goddard would be a nice fit for him as, Kittle's going to miss a decent amount of time here.
Well, the problem is, I mean, Kenneth Walker, he's got Walker, Jacobs, and Kamara, and, Walker's in a contract year. There's a lot of people who really liked him. I was a little concerned about him. I thought Charbonnet was going to be a lot more involved. Thought it was going to be a 1-2 punch, and it actually leaned more towards the Charbonnet side.
Yeah, like I said, I think Kenneth Walker, we'll see if it continues. I think maybe they're easing Kenneth Walker and battled some, the foot injury during training camp. But we'll see what happens. I mean, if Charbonnet continues again, this week and possibly even to week 3, then I'll start hitting the panic button for Kenneth Walker.
On the defensive side of the ball for Chris and Nolan here, I was concerned about their defensive tackle position from the beginning, and it didn't really help at all. I mean, David Onyemata got him a big donut. Adam Butler did okay. He had 3 assisted tackles, a QB hit, but it's a new defense with Pete Carroll. How are they going to, utilize, him in that position? Singleton only got them 13 points. He didn't have that great of a game. Elliott now, he's been ruled out with a knee injury, with a sprained MCL. So I don't know. They've got some. I don't even know why they didn't start Xavier McKinney. I mean, it seems like a head scratcher to me. But the one promising thing is they had Rashawn Gary on the bench. They probably can start him going forward here.
Yeah, Gary will definitely be a bright spot. Obviously, Ernest Jones had a really good game, got him 25 points as well. Surprising, Cam Taylor-Britt getting them only 0.5. That's surprising to me.
Yeah, looking at John's team, we were really concerned about the D tackles being both Seattle, but it didn't hurt them. Leonard Williams, had 7 total tackles, a tackle for loss, and a QB hit, and then Byron Murphy had 6 total tackles and a QB hit. They both played really well. John's defense is pretty solid altogether. I will say I'm sure he was pretty excited about Pete Werner. Pete Werner has been a disappointment in his entire career. But he, 9 total tackles and a sack and a QB hit. If that's more to come, that's really going to help his linebacker position.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm sure, it's interesting. He's got some interesting safeties. I was going to say he's got to get Hufanga in his lineup, but,
And why did he start Hufanga? I don't know why he didn't do that.
Yeah, but Hooker and Merrick did score pretty well for him too, so it's hard to complain there. He's got some more interesting corners that can help fill in there because his cornerbacks are definitely disappointing for him this week as well.
All right, so our last matchup was our number 1 team against number 9. Jake as number 1, Aaron as number 9. We had a huge upset, Joe. Jake lost this game, 278.3 points for Jake compared to Aaron's 376.45. With Jake, his offense underperformed Aaron's, and if that's going to happen, and I don't see it going well for Jake. I mean, Jake does have a really good defense as well. I think the quarterback position is going to be the big thing that's going to hurt him. Trevor Lawrence is a starter. I'm very bullish on Jake's part. He even extended Trevor Lawrence 2 years, which I thought was a very interesting move. Low guaranteed, so if it doesn't pan out, I guess I can understand you could just get out of it. But looking at the team here, T. Higgins, scored less than 10 points. Njoku, a guy who we thought was really interesting going into the year. Now you got Fannin getting involved. Jefferson and Neighbors didn't have that good of games. Just a disappointing outcome for Jake's team here.
Yeah, definitely disappointing. Really, one thing that he's got going for him is he's got Tyler Warren on the bench, who would have had 14 extra points for him. So that definitely things to look up for there. But like you said, the quarterback position, Trevor Lawrence only 18 points. We'll see. Lawrence does have a great matchup coming up this week with the Bengals, but if he doesn't perform against the Bengals, I'd start to be worried. And Stroud, another one of his options, only would have got him 14 points.
Well, that's where it's just like, I'm starting Warren here on out if I'm him.
Yeah.
But he's got rags. He's got so many riches here. He's got Pitts and Warren and Strange on the bench. He's got Quentin Johnston and Zay Flowers on the bench. He's even got J.K. Dobbins, Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt, and Zach Charbonnet. Those guys aren't slouches either for running back. I just, if I were him, if there was a quarterback that I'd be interested in, why not trade some of those players and get a dominant quarterback? If you get a dominant quarterback in here, like, might as well kiss the league goodbye. He would run the table in my mind. I don't know.
Yeah, that's his weakest spot, and we'll hit on his defense, who he had some disappointing players there. But yeah, if I was him, I think I'd strongly consider that, just because I don't know him having the championship caliber roster, for him to be rolling out Trevor Lawrence or CJ Stroud. I know Stroud did have a tough matchup against the Rams. See how he improves, but if he has a similar season as to last year, it's hard to get excited about either of those guys at quarterback.
No. And then looking at Aaron's team, I think this might be the team that we overlooked the most.
I was going to say Aaron's going to be definitely throwing a lot of heat at us.
Oh yeah, absolutely. This was the fuel he needed to show us, because Breece Hall, somebody who you and I were really concerned, he proved all the haters wrong. And then even Deebo Samuel, a guy who performed phenomenally, did really well. And this isn't even considering how, he's got Rashee Rice and Jordan Addison, who are suspended right now. Aaron's offense could be really potent here with Emeka Buka, Deebo Samuel, Cortland Sutton, Rashee Rice, and Jordan Addison. That's an incredible tandem there.
Yeah, and then he's also got, Jawan Johnson on his bench, probably an upgrade over Pat Freiermuth, or, even an upgrade over, if you wanted to go Freiermuth and an extra tight end over a guy like Jaden Higgins, who might still take some time before he's ready to contribute right away. But yeah, we weren't sure what he was going to get out of Breece Hall. Obviously, he looked really good in a week 1 against the Steelers, and I got to imagine, he'll have a nice week in week 2 against your Bills, Steve. Unfortunately for you.
Oh, yeah. On the defensive side of the ball for Jake, kind of just disappointed. Right? You had Nick Bosa, who performed phenomenally, but Aiden Hutchinson, only 1 QB hit. As he kind of continues to get back from that injury. Will he really be himself at all this year? Or will it be one more year until he gets to that point? Jalen Carter obviously had the spitting incident, so he got Jake a donut. That didn't help at all. Micah Parsons situationally playing, he played well, but are they going to try to preserve him? So a couple guys that you would expect to do really well. Now, I do think he's got to be pretty excited about Deron Payne, doing as well as he did with the sack, and the QB hit, the 4 total tackles. If that happens, Jake's going to be pretty excited. But I don't know. It should be interesting. With Jake's defense here, on paper it looks great. But I don't know. Maybe there might be more problems ahead as far as just conditioning and getting guys to be their actual self here.
Yeah, I mean the big one is Aiden Hutchinson, right? And whether or not he returns to the form that we saw. I mean, he was on a tremendous pace before his injury last year. And also just if this Lions team takes a step as a whole, like when he was doing that, I mean, Lions were getting ahead and playing with the lead. And like we always say, it's a lot easier for pass rushers to get after the quarterback when their team's winning. If all of a sudden their offense starts to be a little bit more stagnant and they're just not that dominant Lions team, I mean, that's not going to help Hutchinson either, on top of trying to get back from the injury.
On Aaron's side of the team here, Aaron's side, for his defense here, Will McDonald had a fantastic game with 2 sacks. He could really be progressing to be that next player. But other than that, I mean, everybody else was just kind of okay. I was kind of surprised to see how good Eric Murray did. That was a Wave 2 signing, and I thought Eric Murray was going to be a big hole for his defense, but what do I know? he had a phenomenal week. And Aaron, he's got a ton of great corners. I mean, Will Johnson, Keon Mitchell, both of those guys played really well. I kind of question why he didn't start them. I could definitely see both of them going into a starting lineup next week.
Yeah, I mean, McCollum should have scored him a lot more points. He dropped 2 interceptions in that game. So, but definitely, Will Johnson or Mitchell over Benford would definitely make sense there for sure. But yeah, he had some guys that performed better. And honestly, if Aaron's able to get these contributions with his offense and, like you mentioned, a guy like Will McDonald takes the next step, I mean, he's going to be underrated for where we put him initially at the power rankings.
And the one thing that really cost him too is that Christian Wilkins, vanishing act, I'll put it, with his incident, because he's really relying on Christian Wilkins to be that second DT, and it doesn't look like Christian Wilkins is really going anywhere. And he's got him for 2 more years at $22 million a year. I mean, it's just devastating.
Yeah, it really is. And hard to imagine, given the rumors and stuff that came out of him and what was happening in the locker room, that teams are just rushing to sign him on top of, whatever, injury problem that he was having, where the Raiders didn't really want to deal with him anymore.
So that does it for this episode. We went through our week 1 recap where we talked about some shocking upsets, some teams that we felt pretty good about the power rankings, but Joe, we were wrong. There were some big upsets here in the first results for our contract salary cap Dynasty League. Like I said at the top of the episode, if you haven't done so already, check out one of our most recent episodes where we went through what it's like to be in a real contract salary cap Dynasty Fantasy Football League. We went through our initial power rankings. I want to go check that out. Thank you so much for tuning in, and until next time.